everybody, welcome to The World This Week. War has exploded again on half a dozen fronts across eastern Ukraine.
Терористичних військ за участю.
European Central Bank announces a huge stimulus plan.
We can make it cheaper to invest, but people have to want to invest.
A new round of tension between President Obama and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu.
He's spoken to a joint session many times in the past. That's certainly not something we have opposed, nor do we oppose it.
And Saudi Arabia's King Abdullah, credited with pushing it toward modernity, has died at 90. These are some of the issues we'll touch upon this Sunday. U.S.-Israeli relations hit another all-time low this week when House Speaker John Boehner invited Prime Minister Netanyahu to address the joint session of Congress just before Israeli elections. The White House reacted with strong criticism and announced that President Obama would not meet with Netanyahu in Washington. With us now is Tal Shalev, I-24 News correspondent. Hi, Tal.
Hi, Jacob.
Let's go minute by minute how this crisis unfolded.
Well, it was very dramatic. It's only hours after the State of the Union address in which President Obama announces and threatens that he will veto any congressional move on the Iranian nuclear negotiations. Boehner announces this invitation to Netanyahu, and he does say Netanyahu will address the Congress on the same Iranian issue just weeks before the Israeli elections. Apparently, Netanyahu and Boehner had been hammering out the details of this deal for weeks, and it serves both sides. For Netanyahu, for Boehner, Netanyahu is the ultimate answer in the battle, in a very fierce battle against the administration on the nuclear negotiations with Iran. And for Netanyahu, he's getting a perfect gift from his Republican supporters, giving him this very warm reception, standing ovations just 2 weeks before the elections. But guess who they forgot to inform? The minute Boehner announced he was coming, it was clear that one person or one important building was left out of the picture.
I did not consult with the White House. The Congress can make this decision on its own. I don't believe I'm poking anyone in the eye. There is a serious threat that exists in the world. And the president last night kind of papered over it.
Did not announce, not poking, and the president was furious?
Definitely. The White House had no idea and was furious, and even Secretary Kerry, who's usually the most moderate voice there inside the administration, even he was, he diplomatically said it's unusual, but he was shocked. Just a day before this, he had a 2-hour meeting with the Israeli ambassador to Washington, Ron Dermer, and Dermer didn't mention a word, so everyone was shocked. Moreover, both Netanyahu and Boehner said it was a bipartisan invitation coming from both parties. But then the leaders of the Democrats in both the Senate and the House said that they were not in the loop. So Washington was shocked by this quote-unquote breach of protocol and the extent of the political stunt, especially after Obama asked Netanyahu specifically not to push on the Iranian sanctions at the moment. Let's see how the cold shoulder from the White House looks.
President at this point does not plan to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu on a visit that apparently is scheduled for March. The reason for that is that Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit comes about 2 weeks before the Israeli elections. And this administration goes to great lengths to ensure that we don't give even the appearance of interfering or attempting to influence the outcome of a democratically held election in another country.
Now, next chapter, Secretary of State John Kerry outs Israeli Mossad on a deep background briefing to American senators.
Yeah, well, on the sidelines of the debate of this whole debacle, or maybe at the essence of it, because this is a debate and a division over foreign policy at the end, not only politics. But Secretary of State exposes the backyard of Netanyahu, that not everyone agrees with Netanyahu's position of pushing forward with sanctions at this moment. Let's see what Kerry had to say.
One of the top intelligence personnel within the Israeli intelligence field, I won't name names, but this person was asked directly by a congressional delegation that visited there over the weekend what the effect of sanctions would be, and this person answered that it would be like throwing a grenade into the process.
Now, this person is the head of Israeli Mossad, which now unequivocally denies the whole thing.
Well, first of all, after Kerry's remarks, that just a few hours later, a Bloomberg report provides more info, saying that Israeli intel officials have been briefing a Senate delegation to Israel exactly with the same position, showing that actually in Israel there are people who are siding with Obama on this topic and not with Netanyahu. And of course, Netanyahu is not very happy to have this laundry outside. He summons the head of the Mossad for a tough talk, and the Mossad does publish a rare reaction. But in any case, Israeli officials have also expressed discontent with the fact that the Senates have been leaking the comments made by the head of the Mossad to the press. So this is just another brouhaha on the sideline of the whole Boehner debacle. But the fact is that Netanyahu himself seems quite satisfied with everything that's going on. He also posted a Facebook video saying exactly how excited he is to accept the invitation.
I am excited to be invited for the third time to appear before Congress. We are approaching decision point over the Iranian nuclear issue. For years I have been fighting Iranian efforts to produce nuclear weapons, and it's highly important that Israel's voice will be heard.
Netanyahu is excited. Now, how this huge mess serves Netanyahu?
Well, first of all, every time that the topic is diplomatic and it's foreign policy and it's international and it's not an internal topic, the cost of living or anything that has to do with the socio-economic situation, this serves Netanyahu. Netanyahu already has been seen to benefit back in a trend of benefiting in the polls at the end of last week. So this is the confrontation also helps Netanyahu in the right-wing supporters amongst his constituents. That are Obama is not popular.
Exactly. President Obama is not popular in Israel.
Exactly.
So Netanyahu is probably going to get some points in this campaign.
Netanyahu is probably going to get some points in this campaign, and he'll also getting two, not only one, but two very friendly audiences, not only the Congress, but also the AIPAC policy conference that will be happening a few days later. And this 2 weeks before the elections, no one can ask for a better present, something with a wide wink to the Israeli voter.
Tal Shalev, I-24 News correspondent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We are joined now by J Street President Jeremy Ben-Ami. Thank you very much for coming here to I-24 News studios.
Thank you very much for having me. Good to be here.
Let me start with the Obama administration's absence from Paris. Was this a misjudgment?
Yeah, I think absolutely, and I think the White House acknowledged they made a mistake. I don't know that they appreciated in advance just how significant the event would be, and certainly looking back on it, they know they should have been there in a very high level.
Is the wave of anti-Semitism in Europe connected in your mind to Israeli policies in the West Bank with the Palestinians?
Well, anti-Semitism goes back centuries, if not millennia, and predates the existence of the State of Israel and the settlements and the occupation and this government's policies. So clearly anti-Semitism itself is not caused by Israeli actions and policies. But I think one has to be honest in saying that some of the present policies don't help. And in the effort to minimize anti-Semitism, in the effort to minimize the problems that Jewish people around the world face, I think it's important to think about the role of Israeli policy and the occupation and how we deal with the Palestinians.
Now, with the rise of ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other jihadi movements and Hamas, many Israelis have lost their appetite for concessions to the Palestinians. Did J Street also modify positions?
On the one hand, the notion that a two-state solution is the right thing for Israel remains as true today as it was a few years back before we even heard the term Islamic State or we knew what Al-Qaeda was.
I'm sure you've noticed that the whole election campaign in Israel has become quite right-wing. I mean, nobody is running on a platform of let's get rid of the settlements. Are you disappointed by this?
It makes complete sense to me that the primary issue in this election will be whether or not the Israeli people feel that the current course that the country is on is working for them and their children. And one piece of that is the way in which priorities are set for spending in, let's say, the settlements versus spending for housing inside the Green Line or for health care or child care. But I understand that the election will be mostly about how people regard their future and the choices they have among possible leaders for what's best for them and their family.
Yeah, but it didn't used to be like this. I mean, maybe Israelis do not make this linkage anymore between the peace process and their own prosperity.
Well, it is very hard to look at the situation today and see a great deal of immediate hope. And it makes it a lot more, and when I say the situation, I mean the Israeli-Palestinian situation, and therefore it makes it a lot easier for the debate politically to focus more at home. What is happening with the cost of living? What is happening with the cost of housing? What are the gaps between rich and poor? Who does the political process favor? Does it favor the ordinary citizen and their family? Does it favor the privileged classes and the wealthy? That's where the debate will be when there isn't that much hope of answering some of these larger questions about the politics of the region and the conflict in between Israelis and Palestinians.
The Obama administration all but deserted the peace process entirely. Is this a mistake?
Well, I think the commitment shown by Secretary Kerry and by President Obama to try to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is greater than anybody would have expected going into the president's second term. It's hard to say that what they did was an abandonment. Having tried for 9 months and run into problems with both parties, let's be clear. There was it's not a one-sided failure here. I think it makes sense that the president and the secretary said, we're going to take a little bit of a timeout. We're going to wait for the parties to reassess their own level of interest in moving forward, and we can't force the parties to do something they don't want to do themselves. Perhaps if there is a change in direction in this election and a government comes into power that is very serious about not only a two-state solution, but a regional peace that puts Israel on the side of many of its Arab neighbors in the fight against extremism in the neighborhood. Perhaps then the administration will be anxious and ready to re-engage and to play a leadership role.
Perhaps. J Street President Jeremy Ben-Ami, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good to talk to you.
A rare interview now with a Muslim cleric from France. We are talking to Mr. Hassem Chalgoumi, who is the Imam of the Drancy mosque, which is a suburb of Paris. We caught up with him in Tunisia, and we asked, to his opinion, what are the roots of Muslim radicalism in France?
Unfortunately, this phenomenon of radicalization and recruiting exists for years now. It is a plague. It has begun years ago with the Muslim Brotherhood. There's a vacuum. The fact that in France there's a separation between religion and state creates a vacuum which unfortunately allows outside elements and groups like Muslim Brotherhood to implement themselves here and penetrate France. That is one thing, but there's also another problem, and that's the lack of knowledge about Islam. The youth doesn't really know much about its own religion. This ignorance is the number one enemy. It allows these young people to be recruited for these radical causes. And finally, there's internet, which is a major issue. These young people's God, their sheikh, is Google. They don't learn about religion from the source, they learn from the internet.
Yeah. We also asked what do religious leaders such as yourself can do to calm things down?
You know we're trying to do our best. I'm president of the Association of Imams in France. We are about 80 imams and we try to mobilize people in each of our mosques, our neighborhoods, our cities, with our own contacts. Secondly, we also use the internet and the other medias to make our voices heard and talk about the real Islam, instead of the radical Islam of the Muslim Brotherhood and jihadism.
face à l'islam de l'intégrisme qui est celui malheureusement des frères musulmans, celui de salafisme, du djihadisme.
Of course we're lacking means. You know, we need means to train imams, to have better websites, to use more volunteers who can work on social media, to make brochures, organize conferences everywhere. It's a whole campaign to battle radicalization.
Des moyens qu'on peut faire des brochures, des conférences.
Ah yes, and all these groups like Al-Qaeda, etc., they have incredible means. Sometimes they're even funded by governments. Next to that, we, the moderate majority, are missing means. We need to understand there's work to do.
Je comprends la laïcité, mais en même temps, il faut comprendre qu'il y a un devoir à faire.
Imam Hassan Shalgumi, thank you very much.
Merci à vous.
And this has been The World This Week. We'll see you here next Sunday. Have a great week.